Adventures of Batman with Robin, Boy Wonder. Batman and Robin, dynamic duo against crime and corruption, whose real identities as millionaire philanthropist Bruce Wayne and his young ward Dick Grayson are known only to Alfred, the faithful butler. Ever alert, they respond swiftly to a signal from the police, and moments later, from the secret Batcave deep beneath Wayne Manor, they roar out to protect life, limb, and property as Batman and Robin, Cape Crime Fighters. Batman and Robin, scourge of Gotham City's kooky criminals. The Joker, clown prince of crime. The Penguin, pudgy purveyor of perfidy. And the cool, cruel Mr. Freeze. Watch out, villains. Here come Batman and Robin.
Welcome back, citizens, to an all-new episode of the Batcave podcast. It's your old bat chum, John S. Drew here, and we're going to continue now with the fourth story, or the fourth episode, so to speak, of the Batman-Superman Adventure Hour. We're looking at the Batman stories in particular from Filmation 1968, and joining me for this discussion, as he's been bravely storming through it here, because some people have actually been saying we're kind of nuts to be doing this. Let me bring in Mr. Dan Greenfield from 13thdimension.com. Hey, Dan.
Hey, John. Yeah, it's true. I mean, people are like, are you guys really doing this? And I'm like, I'm all in.
I forget the Twitter user, but who commented to us saying, what was it? Brave Journey.
Godspeed. Yes. Godspeed, you brave cheap animation astronauts or something like that.
Yeah.
It was funny. I laughed at that too.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. Yeah. And overall the response to doing this has been pretty good.
Yeah, it has been. People love this, and they. I mean, I know that the audience feedback has been strong, and the stuff that I've written at 13th Dimension about Filmation always gets people, reading and commenting, and I think it's one of those things. And I've not to belabor it, but I have mentioned it a few times. I think also part of it is that there is a certain nostalgia that I'm not sure how many people have even watched these episodes that recently, even though they're readily available, because it's not entire episodes I find that aren't as memorable as the TV show, the 66 TV show, but people remember the whole idea of Filmation fondly, and they remember overall the series fondly, and it was that. As I've noted before, if Batman 66 is a steak, this show is a really good burger. I mean, it's like if you couldn't watch that and you watch this, you were still doing okay. Not the same, not the same quality, not the same fulfillment, but it's fun nonetheless.
Yeah, no. And I was looking through like artifacts when it comes to the Filmation stuff on YouTube. You've got the opening for the Superman Aquaman Adventure Hour. I would love to see the opening, what it was like for Batman Superman.
I think it's out there. You have to piece this stuff together. There are some websites where you could just get the audio. There is stuff on YouTube. I mean, I've actually made my own personal playlist that I call Filmation, which has all of the different sound clips that I've been able to pull together from the opening. The opening music, which you can find officially on iTunes, that was released by DC a couple of years ago for their 75th anniversary. The music of DC. You could hear all of the theme songs for all of the different cartoons. There's Aquaman, the Teen Titans. There's Batman. There's Superman, Superboy. You can get all of those on iTunes, or you could buy the disc. It's again the music of DC. They did it twice. The music of DC, and then there was a second volume that came out last year. But there are other sites also where you could pick up little bits and pieces. And the Superman, I might have heard the Superman Batman Hour. I'm not 100% sure, but I've heard a lot of it.
Okay, so I did the little rabbit hole while you were explaining that there and found this much. It's not the audio, but it is the words to the Batman Superman Hour, and which includes also a screen capture of the logo for the show.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so the lyrics are Batman, Superman, I guess you got to linger on Superman. Watch out, villains, here we come. There's some music. Penguin, Riddler, Joker 2, the Cape Crusaders after you. More music. Batman, more music. Batman. To combat crime, they work together. Batman, Batman. It's a bird. It's a plane. It's Superman. It's Superman, the Man of Steel. It's Superman, music. Batman, Superman, and then the announcer kicks in and says, the Batman Superman hour.
That's Pulitzer stuff right there.
Right there. But it's like, oh, wow. Now, great. There's the lyrics. There's the logo. Someone has a screen capture, so someone's got the video.
I'm sure it's out there. I mean, it's just, one of these years I'll get time to find it. But right. that's great. I almost don't want to find it now. Now that you've done that, I think that's how I want it to be in my mind for the rest of my life.
My rendition.
Yes. Batman. That's great. All
right, so let's get into this here. We're going to be talking about the Catwoman in the 9 Lives of Batman that aired October 4th, 1968, written by Dennis Marks. Now, before we get into it, I'm going to ask you, you want to do it now or you want to do it at the end of the episode? You're not a fan of this Catwoman, though.
No, I'm not. And it's not the look. First off, we'll go right to the way she looks, which is fine. DC, a little bit of background about the Catwoman character is that Catwoman after the Wortham witch hunts of the 50s, and for the benefit of most of your listeners, I'm sure know this, but for those that don't, in the early 50s, there were even congressional hearings about whether or not comic books contributed to juvenile delinquency. It was basically whipped up by a psychiatrist or psychologist named Frederick Wortham. And he'd written a book called The Seduction of the Innocent. And it basically went after comic books as being a root cause of juvenile delinquency. And he's widely now considered a charlatan, that he made up most of his conclusions, and that he was the person who almost destroyed the comic book industry, basically because of what he did. And the congressional witch hunts that followed. A lot of people lost their jobs, their livelihoods. Comic book companies started to fade away. And what also started to happen was that the tenor of the comics changed dramatically, and that's where the Comics Code Authority came from, this self-censoring, self-regulating board that was supposed to basically be standards and practices for an entire industry. And what it did was that it really did tamp down on violence and darker content and adult content. It basically also inhibited sexuality and there were the allegations that Batman and Robin were lovers. And so the next thing you knew, they introduced Batwoman and Batgirl or not the next thing, but over a period of time, they introduced Batwoman and Batgirl, the original Batgirl, not Barbara Gordon Batgirl, as love interests for Batman and Robin. And in this period, Catwoman, who had been an A-list villain and had been, the temptress, faded out. She was basically taken off the board. And she was gone. She was gone for years. And by the time the 66 show came around, they needed female villains, and they went with Catwoman. Everybody knew who Catwoman was, but she had actually not been seen in the comics for a number of years. Julie Newmar comes in, and va-va-voom. I mean, everything is... she just completely changed everything. At the same time, though, the comics still didn't leap back in. In fact, even during this period around this time, they introduced Poison Ivy, who was a sexualized, super siren villainess. But they didn't bring Catwoman back right away, although she did appear in, of all things, a Pop-Tart comic book. That was a giveaway in Pop-Tarts. I actually have it. And the outfit she wears is sort of a combination of her classic purple dress, but also what she wore on the TV show. It's kind of a combination of the two. When they finally did bring her back to the comics, they brought her in basically the Julie Newmar outfit, but because of likeness concerns, they made it green instead of black. I've never seen a green cat. I've never known of a green cat, but for some reason they decided that green would be the color of her jumpsuit. But other than that, she pretty much looks like that version of the character. So when they were doing Filmation, they did the same thing. They bring in this version of the character. So that's just a little bit of history there. And if anybody wants to expand upon that or embellish upon that, just do so on the in Facebook or on in the show notes or 13th Dimension in the comments when we post this story there too. But that's basically the history in a nutshell. So it's not really her look that bugs me. I kind of like it. It's of its time. It's the voice. It's the voice by Jane Webb, and that's not to call out Jane Webb because she did a wonderful job with Batgirl. This was obviously a decision that was made, but whereas Catwoman, certainly by whether it was Julie Newmar, Lee Merriweather, and certainly Eartha Kitt,
Yeah.
Catwoman purred. Her voice was a purr. It was sexy. It was inviting. It was alluring. And I understand that this is a Saturday morning / Sunday morning cartoon TV show for kids, and you can't over-sexualize characters. I totally get that. But they make her screechy. Her voice is a screech. And there was another way. I mean, certainly 10 years later, or 8 to 10 years later, when they did the 1977 show, when they recast, I mean, I actually don't know who the actress was who did it on that show. Maybe it was Jane Webb all over again. But she has a much more fitting voice, a purr in her voice, something that actually fits the character. Every time I see Catwoman on the shows, and one of my favorite episodes of the series, it's not this one, but there is, others. There's another one specifically that I'm thinking of that is one of my favorite episodes of the series that stars Catwoman. But that voice takes me right out of it. And it's really unfortunate because it just feels like it's one of those things that could have been so much better if not for the choice that they made with that voice.
Yeah. I feel the same way. I just it's irritating. It's the
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like fingernails on a blackboard.
Yeah.
It just doesn't fit the character. Catwoman was never supposed to be shrieky.
Right.
She was always supposed to be purring. There was something seductive, and I understand drawing the line for a kids show. I totally get that, but that doesn't mean that the voice can't be something different. And Jane Wood made a great Batgirl. Her Barbara Gordon and Batgirl voice was on the money, and maybe that was because it was more closer to her natural speaking voice, and she was putting on something for Catwoman. But whatever she or the directors wanted, whatever it ended up being, it just doesn't work. It's unfortunate because other than that, the Catwoman episodes in and of themselves are pretty good.
Yeah. No, I agree. All right, let's talk about this one here. It's an interesting opening because it kind of just gets right into it as Batman and Robin are chasing after one of Catwoman's Catmen in the Batmobile, and he's in the cat car.
Hang on, Robin.
I guess that's what they called it, right? The cat car?
I don't know. Did they call it the Catmobile? Did they give it a name? I don't remember.
I don't remember.
I remember on the TV show it was the kitty car.
That's right.
And yeah, but this is, and again, as I mentioned in the previous episode about the Joker's vehicle, I would love this. And actually, they did produce. Eagle Moss also produced the kitty car, the TV show Kitty Car, just in the same way that Filmation produced a Filmation Batmobile, a little model of the Batmobile. I would love this Catmobile. I would love it looks really cool, and you don't really get the full feeling of it as you do in another episode that we'll talk about it in some time. But this one, it's just really cool. It's a cool color, even though the green, it shouldn't be green. It's okay that it's green. The car could be green. But it's got that face that you kind of see. And I also like the henchman outfits. They wear little Catman outfits. I like that.
Yeah. No, I did like that, yeah. So they're led down into an alley where they're caught in this trap that sends the Batmobile spinning into a building. I mean, the building opens up and they go inside. And then we get this elaborate, and I'm like thinking, this is really elaborate. I thought this was going to be a longer sequence, but it ends very quickly as it looks like they're on a roller coaster inside the building.
It's great. I really like this. I really think this episode starts out really strongly.
It does.
And even the idea that the Batmobile could be taken off the road by this device is, and I've mentioned this before, this is something that you could do in animation that you can't really do in live action. So they're taking that extra step of something that feels over the top, and they're able to execute it. It's really good, and I like it a lot.
Mm-hmm. I do too, and I love the ending, like of the chase itself as they're making their way and they come to a stop because they see the oncoming headlights moving towards them, and it turns out it's the reflection of their head beams.
Right. It's a really cool opening.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. The thing is, it's a cool opening. It's got a decent middle part for the first act, and then it's going to fall apart because what happens is we get, and it's right out of the 66 series, and I'm sure the comic book did something in a similar vein as well, where Batman and Robin are now facing 9 doors that they've got to figure out which one is the one that's going to get them free, but the other ones have all these traps. And Catwoman is making her proclamations from a cage she's hanging from.
You caped crusaders have been my nemesis for too long, so you must cease to exist.
I warn you, Catwoman, you're not playing with mice.
I know. I am playing with the world's greatest escape artists. Therefore, I offer you a challenge. Since a cat has 9 lives, Batman, I have set 9 lethal traps, which I have spent years devising. I expect you to survive 1, 2, perhaps more. But I know you cannot survive them all.
The mirror wall. Batarang.
My friends, you cannot get out safely, except through one of those doors, the one which leads to freedom.
Where'd she go?
An old stage illusion, Robin. I'll explain it to you later.
This speaks to me because on the 66 show, twice Batman and Robin were captured by Catwoman in similar fashion.
Yes.
In what I consider to be the best episode of Batman 66, or at least my favorite episode of 1966, which was Catwoman's first appearance, The Perfect Crime, Better Luck Next Time. Mm-hmm. The cliffhanger, if you remember, the last third of the first half of that episode is them in, captured by Catwoman, and the whole trap with Batman and Robin with the spikes in the wall and the pneumatic tube that sucks Robin away, and then and then we get to the 2 doors, the lady or the tiger, the lady or the tiger, and Catwoman, of course, taunting them from above. And then they kind of come back to that later on, where they have the one with the hot foot and they went back to that well. This is the same thing. I couldn't help but think when I watched this that the writers of the show thought this is what Catwoman does, and that they got it from the TV show, because that's basically this is a riff on that. They walk in, cat's got 9 lives, they got 9 doors, and if you pull on which one of these doors is going to set you free, the others it's instant death. And even with the first one where he opens up, a panther leaps out.
Right.
So I mean, you're getting all of that stuff. Catwoman from above having the time of her life, while Batman and Robin are struggling. Where it starts to go a little south is when she disappears out of thin air, or into thin air, and Robin's like, "Where did she go?" And Batman's like, "Oh, it's an old parlor trick. I'll explain later." I don't think he ever explains it.
No, he doesn't.
Think he ever does. Yeah, which is just and that they do that on this show, where they say, "I'll explain it another time."
Yes.
So they're counting on the kids not to remember the fact that they just basically pulled a fast one that they had no intention of giving a payoff to. That happens here, but still, when you're watching them figure out which doors are which, and they open the door and an arrow flies out or a spear flies out, they bring Catwoman down to their level, and they put her into the jeopardy also with them. All of that's great. Mm-hmm. I think that is a really well done and well executed sequence that is worthy of the 66 TV show, and entertaining in its own right.
I agree, except for one thing. Then it's from that point on, because when they get Catwoman down there with them, because she was in the cage the whole time, they use the cage to capture the Panther, and
which again is not really explained.
No, but again, you know what? It didn't bother me as much as it did with, like, the Riddler in the 3rd season episode, when suddenly Batman's like, it's an old trick of his. Now you see him, now you don't. What?
Right. Right.
That bothered me. That bothered me.
Yeah.
This didn't. I was fine with it. Maybe it's because it's the cartoon setting. I don't know. But what got me was, I was like, okay, you've set all this up. We still have X number of doors. And Catwoman won't explain it at first, and then she quickly gives in when they spring the spear trap.
Right.
And to me, the whole story goes south from there, because she tries to escape. She floods them with the gas. They got the gas masks. They're fine. They get out. They chase after her. To me, I would have loved more of just the 2 of them and her in her traps. And like something went wrong where she's just as stuck as they are. She can explain what's going to happen, but they can't get out of it so easily.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. Sure. I mean, they definitely could have done that. I liked it for what it was.
No, I do too, because then it also begs the question, because as we'll learn afterwards, because they do the chase, but she's got the added little thing of putting a bomb in the car so that when the car gets 60, there's Ma Parker, you know, they eject the bomb, but she gets away. And then they learn later they're glowing with radioactivity thanks to the gas shield. To me, it's like, so you set up this elaborate trap to gas them? Or was the gas backup in case they escaped? Yeah,
the logic of, and again, I'll pause for a second about logic. Some people say, oh, it's just a kid's show. You don't know. You need logic. You need to have storytelling logic. But even if you're, I mean, not even if, you shouldn't write down to the audience.
Right.
And that is a problem that these Filmation episodes did have. And not to be, because it's in its own way, it's an unfair comparison. The one thing about not the one thing, but one of the many great things about the Bruce Timm, Batman animated series and all of those different series, that they never wrote down their material. They wrote their material straight. And that's why they endure and are much more memorable than these episodes are to a lot of people, most people, because the writing was so good. And here they said, it's just a bunch of kids, whatever, let's just keep it going. Let's keep it going. And they would have these ideas for things that they wanted to do, but they wouldn't necessarily give a good reason to go there. And in this particular case, I agree with you. After a very strong start, the whole idea, first off, they end up going back to this well with the glowing and the radioactive spray with Catwoman in another episode. So, we won't talk about that yet. We'll talk about that when that episode comes up. But the whole idea is that, okay, now I'm going to know that for 24 hours, Batman is going to be glowing, and I'm going to find him in a city of 8 million people. And all of that whole idea is absurd. It's really not a good idea. The only good that comes out of it is Bruce Wayne's reason for having to go out in public. And it's because the next day is election day, and it is his civic duty to make sure that he votes. Right. And if that's not an Adam West line, I don't know what is. That actually might be the most Adam West moment in this entire series. Yep. It is hysterically funny. Yeah. And it is downright campy, and it is, and as I noted at the beginning when we started doing these episodes, you sometimes one of what the humor of the Batman TV show, a lot of it had to do with the fact that it was real people doing this, the inherent absurdity of real people dressing up this way and doing what they do. How do you make that kind of humor translate to a cartoon? This is one of the ways in which it works. And whether they meant it, whether they were laughing, they had to be laughing when they wrote this, because it is really, really funny.
The next day, all Gotham City turns out to vote. And watching from her secret observation post, Catwoman suddenly gets the answer she has been waiting for.
Now I know for sure. Millionaire Bruce Wayne is Batman.
Disaster of disasters. Catwoman has discovered Batman's true identity. Or has she? Stay tuned for the incredible second part of The 9 Lives of Batman. Coming up next.
It's the Action Kids. What in the world are they up to now?
Let's get right down to business.
Business? What business?
Fun business!
The Fun Pack Carry-All Action Playset by Marx. Look, this opens up the wild action world of Fort Apache. With Indians, cavalrymen, shell-shooting cannons. And here are the Fighting Knights, with a real drawbridge, knights, Vikings, and rock-throwing catapults. Here's the boot camp, with tank, jeep, bullet-shooting machine guns, and 80 soldiers. Or land a helicopter at Cape Kennedy. Fire the rockets, back the space missile into the launching pad, and start the countdown. It's off into space. Zoom! Get Fort Apache. Get the Fighting Knights. Get the boot camp. Get Cape Kennedy. Get all four. And carry your own world of action wherever you go. The Rugged Steel Carry-All Action Playsets by Marx.
By now, Batman and Robin, you know that the gas in the tunnel was radioactive. Your bodies will glow, shine like beacons for 24 hours. When you appear in public in your secret identities, I will know who you are. Your careers as crime fighters will be over.
Having perpetrated her perfidious ploy, Catwoman waits smugly for the Caped Crusader to reveal his true identity.
Millionaire Bruce Wayne. He must be Batman.
But can you be sure, Catwoman? Isn't that Commissioner Gordon glowing too? And Chief O'Hara?
Wow! Batman tricked me.
Commissioner, why do you suppose Batman asked you to have Mr. Wayne and the rest of us sprayed with this awful glowing chemical?
Beats me, Chief O'Hara. But one doesn't question the Caped Crusader when he makes a request, does one?
The only problem is the only other people who are irradiated are Bruce Wayne, Commissioner Gordon, Chief O'Hara.
Right.
She can't figure out which one of those three might be Batman.
Yeah.
I mean, I got to tell you, that's not hard.
Yeah.
And that was the part where it bugged me. I was like, you're not really seeing through the gag. You're not really seeing through this. You're not confusing Catwoman enough. And I think it's writing down to the viewer.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was thinking that. I was like, even just a couple of people walking in.
Yeah, even if somehow he'd managed to get the entire board of Wayne, if he'd gotten an entire room, or if he'd gotten an entire stadium full of people because he irradiated a stadium, which is funny and it's yeah, I want to expose everyone to radiation to save myself, but
they'd go for it.
Yeah, right. They would. Yeah, in this universe, they certainly would, willingly. This is where it loses something. The only thing that does come out of it is that when Batman gets out of a jam and she even makes some side comment where she's like, he's got everything in that belt of his, which is also another sop to kind of that how ridiculous is Batman that he's always prepared.
I'm sorry, I gotta share this because it just hit me as we're talking about having people being radiated. I just have this vision of like flash forward years later, Michael Moore doing a documentary on the horrors of Batman,
yes,
and the radioactive incident, and there's someone just talking into the camera, smiling, going, "But we saved the day. We were able to be a hero like Batman," as a tooth falls out or something.
Batman and me.
Yeah. Oh my God. So, like you said, she, her whole scheme is foiled because she can't seem to tell if it's Gordon or O'Hara or Bruce Wayne.
It's just, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But meanwhile, we got Robin, who, is keeping an eye on things in the Batmobile, and he spots Catwoman, so he pursues after her, and he sends Bruce a signal, which she then jams.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he tracks her to Miss Kitty's woolen mill.
Yep.
And he's captured with, and again, it's so well done, but it's, because you always point out how we never see the punch connect, but this is the closest thing to somebody hitting Robin and actually seeing the physical connection.
It looks, yes, they went right up to the line.
Yeah. They did.
Yeah. And again, to remind your listeners, in case they're jumping in on this episode, at the time, they were very careful about how they showed violence on these cartoons. So usually you would see the punch thrown often to the screen, that pow right at the screen, and then you'd see someone flying. Here, it really does look like they snuck one in, where you actually see them punch somebody out. Yeah.
Catwoman has the signal then started to lure Batman in, and Batman makes his way there with the Batcopter. I love, again, and this is another one of these great ones, as he comes in and it's dark and we just see the shadows in his silhouette.
Yeah.
In the dark.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah.
Robin is caught in this water trap as it's being filled up. He can't get him out because the water's also rigged with wiring. If, Batman should make the wires disconnect and stuff, it'll all explode, I guess. But he gets him out with the bat pulley.
Yeah, the bat pulley.
He carries a hardware store in that belt of his. Release the ring of fire!
Boy, wait till I get that Catwoman.
Easy, chum. Let's keep our cool.
That's going to be hard to do, Batman. Look!
Know what we can do?
The water tank.
Check. Load bat slings with explosive pellets. Hurry. Now!
That's when she says, "Boy, he's got everything in that bat belt of his," or whatever utility, or whatever the line is. I know you've got the sound clip, where again, that's that same kind of that kind of campy aside that would have been right in the you could hear Julie Newmar delivering that line. She's like, "Boy, he's got everything in that belt of his." And she would do it as a double entendre. But it was again, it's one of those moments where it's almost like a comment to the reader or the viewer. But even when he rescues him, again, not to project too much, it reminded me of when Batman had to rescue Robin in The Perfect Crime, where he's over the tiger pit and Batman has to swing in and help him. And I mean, I know that's not exactly. That's not a Batman 66 cliche as much as it's a Batman and Robin cliche, Batman having to rescue Robin. But for some reason, it reminded me of it here, and I guess it's just because of the context.
Right. Yeah. Well, he gets him out, and then a fire starts, and so the two use the water from the tank to put it out. But somehow it weakens the floor, I guess. It gives out from under them, and they're knocked out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I can't explain it.
And
I got nothing.
You got nothing. And then it's like, okay, I've got them again. Let me throw them into quicksand.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's the kitchen sink.
Yes.
I mean, one thing after another, which in and of itself is actually entertaining. I mean, it does make you roll your eyes, but you're like, okay, let's keep going. Yeah.
And just like in the John Aston Riddler episode, they use the heel jets.
Yes. Yeah, I love the heel jets. That's one of my favorites. I love it in the John Aston episode because it's out of a birthday cake. But I do love the heel jets. Also mentioning quicksand, which always is funny, is that, and I'm not the first one to note this, but as a kid, wasn't that one of your biggest fears?
Oh, sure.
Like if you were playing in the woods, that somehow you would come upon quicksand, because it was used so much as a trap or the idea that quicksand was just everywhere.
Oh yeah,
I love yeah. So there you go.
No, that was one of those 70s tropes like dune buggies or
Yeah, it's just right. Exactly, dune buggies. Yes, but that was a good go-to trap for anything. It's I'm stuck in quicksand.
Yeah. So they escape. They track the gang to a department store that they're robbing.
Get them!
A bat fight breaks out.
Watch out, Batman!
I hate to cast pearls before swine, but...
And in the middle of it all, Catwoman manages to get herself caught by getting herself locked in the manager's office.
Look, Batman! Catwoman's getting away!
I'll get her!
Yes, there you go.
With the bars.
Super criminal.
Super criminal, yeah.
There you are. Snug as a bug.
Tricked! Trapped!
So, what else is new, pussycat?
Game is yours, Batman. But you've used up your 9 lives. When we meet again, and I promise you we will, there will be a different ending.
And then we come to the ending, and it's weird because we get a cameo by Barbara who's just standing off to the side.
And she's because they were using stock footage.
Yeah.
So it's just she's just there. She doesn't say anything. There's no reference to her being there. There's no voiceover.
Nope.
There's nothing. She's just there, and it's just because it's stock. It's like it's analogous to when Batman and Robin's logos get reversed or whatever. They just use some stock footage. Oh, and Barbara just happens to be visiting, and she's standing there in the background.
Right. Yeah. And the very, very ending, Robin makes this catnap joke.
Ugh.
And there's these weird fades as they're showing them laughing. They fade to Robin, fade to Batman, as they're laughing about his joke.
It's so true. I mean, we mentioned in a previous episode how they always end up laughing at the end of if they're not, they taunt the villain and then they laugh about it. There's a bunch of balls. And And they do it here, and it goes on for an uncomfortably long time.
Yes.
And I know I've mentioned it before, the Batman Brave and the Bold episode where they knock off Batman and Robin meet Scooby-Doo. In that same episode, they did the Batmanga animation. Very quick aside. There's a sequence where they animate some old Batman manga from the 60s that was based on an American comic at the time, Batman versus Deathman, which became Lord Deathman when he went to Japan. Anyway, when they animated that sequence, at the end, Batman and Robin laugh, and it goes on forever. And it's definitely a sop to this kind of thing, if not this specific episode, but them laughing at the end, but they just keep laughing and laughing and laughing. It's like until it's like really uncomfortable. And it happens here too. It's like, why is this going on so long? I'm sorry. It cracks me up when I think about it because it is like, it is really awkward.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, okay, you like this better than I did.
Yeah, it's fun because the difference is I'm much more forgiving with absurd logic than you are. You are definitely more the stickler, and which is cool because you're right actually in terms of the logic of storytelling, as I noted earlier, really should take hold. But I take these things in the context in which they were created, and so I'm much more forgiving when it comes to this kind of stuff because it just is what it is. And so on the whole, I found it to be, despite the shortcomings that we've discussed, I find it an overall an entertaining episode. There's a lot going for it.
All right, so let's look at the second one, the one-parter, which I'll say I did like the Catwoman one better than this one, but you got excited at the end of last week when we were talking about the possibility.
Only because this is a completely unhinged, stupid story.
Okay, all right.
It's not good. It's not good at all. The only thing that's good about it is the idea. Again, it's playing off the notion that the villains don't just have to have. They're not just gimmicks in and of themselves. When they have thematic crime waves, it may have nothing to do with the fact that he's the Joker. You know, it's not like everything is a playing card this or a playing card that or an old joke this or an old joke that. In this case, it's like, okay, it's good. It's now Pirate Joker. So, and you would see that on the TV show too. The crime wave itself would have its own theme, and that's what happens here. The Joker is going to steal treasure on Skull Island, by the way, which is great. I didn't know Skull Island was that close to Gotham City, so you expected King Kong to come, climbing out of the surf too. But the basic idea that the Joker wants to make a pirate movie, I guess. But I'll let you take over on the recap here.
The Gotham City Library, where Batgirl, in her guise as plain Bab Gordon, is librarian.
Oh, no, not him again.
Holy collision!
The dynamic duo.
You dropped this.
Well, thank you, Boy Wonder.
The way they've got the whole thing set up, because he goes running out with the book, you thought he stole it, but we find out that he's actually been borrowing these books on pirate lore.
Yeah, because I love the idea of the Joker having a library card. Him, and even she's like annoyed. It's like he's that guy who keeps showing up at the library.
Yes.
It's him again. It's like, again, this idea. I mean, and I always liked it on the TV on the 60s. I call it the TV show. They're both TV shows. The 66 show, whenever the villains would show up at the library as a way of introducing Barbara into the story. But again, this idea that yes, the Joker has been. I don't know how he applies for a library card, but he gets one, I guess, and he's been taking out books about pirate lore. It's so dumb.
It's so dumb, and also then we see one of the dumbest things here is Batman's like, oh, maybe he's just trying to improve his mind.
Yes. It is so. This is, I mean, again, if anybody had any idea that these guys hadn't watched the show and weren't taking their cues from the 66 show, they haven't been paying attention. Because that's all this is. This is, I mean, even the comics, and I'll go back to, and forth about, a lot of the things that we have talked about over these 4 episodes are things that we say, oh, that's very much like the TV show. And there are probably listeners who are saying, no, it was like that in the comics too. Yes, of course. But the translation of one show to another show is so obvious that even Scheimer in the book does mention, that they did take cues from the TV show by having cliffhangers and whatever. And I know that that's all in the comics too. But there's a tonal difference. There is a specificity of the gags that are much more in line with what was going on in the TV show than what was going on in the comic books at the time. And even the comic books on the time, again, as a quick aside, the 66 show was not so much based on the comic books that were being produced at the time of the TV show was being started, but ones from a few years before that. Because in 1964, they were trying to make Batman a little bit more serious or a little bit more in the real world. And it was when the TV show became so successful, then the comics then became more campy. By the end of the TV show, they really started to dial it back and bring Batman back to his roots. And the Batman that we know today from television and film and comics today, The Dark Knight Returns and all of that stuff, its roots really were sown, or I'm mixing metaphors here, the seeds were sown right at the end of the Batman TV show when DC Comics, first by Neil Adams and other writers and artists, started to draw Batman to bring him back into the idea of this being the creature of the night. So even by the time that the Filmation cartoons were being produced, the comic books were starting slowly but surely to head back in the other direction. This cartoon really was clearly taking its cues from the 1966 show, and this single segment, which defies so many bits of logic, really is clearly influenced by the 66 show.
Yeah. No, it definitely is, and it clearly comes across as a Batgirl episode in many respects.
Yep. Yeah.
Because Barbara decides to go investigate as Batgirl. She finds that Joker has a pirate ship, and he's making a movie, but there's no film in the camera.
No, the whole thing is just a big sham.
It's a big sham, and she's captured by Joker's men. They keep her in the brig, so she sends out an SOS via her Batbuckle to the Batcave.
SOS from Batgirl.
Plot it, chum.
Roger. It's coming from Skull Island.
To the Batboat. Fast. At this moment, in the Joker's ship's brig, Batgirl finds she can reach the Jolly Joker ensign and cleverly turns it upside down.
Look, on that old pirate ship. An upside-down flag.
It's the international distress signal. Let's go, Robin.
I liked all that, the ship in distress and all that.
Yeah, the international sign of distress, which I also appreciated, because it wasn't enough that a flag with the Joker's face on it wasn't enough of a tip-off.
Right.
That wasn't the tip-off. It was that it was upside down. That was the tip-off that was the Joker's galleon.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, I did like that. So they quickly jump in.
Repel boarders!
They attack, but they're also quickly captured.
Avast, swabs! I'll torpedo those two. That hook's out.
Look out, Batman!
And they figure out, or at least Batman does, that Joker is looking for this gangster's treasure.
Yes.
But they got to get out. Now, see, again, I know this is all logic, but it's like, then Batgirl goes, I've got one more tool left. Here's a hairpin.
Right.
And she's the one who opens the door. It's not like she hands it to Batman and he does it. Yeah. She does it. So why didn't she do that before?
Right, of course. And also, why does she have a hairpin? I mean, I guess did she need a hairpin to have the mask on? That's such a look, not to overstate the point, but again, it's that mild casual sexism,
right?
That was in play, and very much in play on the 66 show, and actually in the comics too. There's a very famous comic book where Batgirl helps to foil the bad guys because she's got a run in her stocking, and she pretends that she needs to fix her makeup, and it's all supposed to be, making fun of sexism, but on the face of it, it's like the whole idea of it is a really sexist idea. So the idea that her get out of jail free card, as it were, is a hairpin. If Batman doesn't have a hairpin, Batman would have found another way, and it's supposed to be female ingenuity, but it is really stupid.
Yeah. Well, it even gets sillier because then they get, on shore and Batgirl falls into a hole.
Very funny.
Yeah. And then they laugh at her.
They
start laughing. It's just like, what a couple of dicks. Yeah. I mean, it's not enough that they taunt the bad guys. It's not enough that they're like, we caught you, Joker, and they all start laughing. That's not enough. But now their best friend, who's helping them out, who got them out of a gym, then falls down a hole, and their response isn't, "Oh my God, let's help Batgirl." Let's laugh at her. Nice.
Yeah.
Really nice.
Yeah.
Great.
And then, of course, we get that sexual innuendo again. I don't know. There I went, hey, now. She's like, I fell on something hard.
Yes, I did too. I just was, yes. I was like, oh, I fell on something. I mean, these guys knew. They had to know. They had to know what they were doing. Whoever wrote it. I forget who wrote this particular episode. It was definitely was. Come on, you're not. These are a bunch of guys who are writing these things, and in that time, cigar chomping guys. I'm going to make a Batgirl joke here. I fell on something hard. The kids won't get that one. 50 years later, we're watching this. We're both around 50 ourselves, and we get the joke.
Yeah, right. And we're giggling like high school kids.
Like little boys. Yeah, giggling like 8th graders.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway.
And what she fell on was the treasure chest, and inside there's all that money. But what Batman does is, to the confusion of Robin. I'm sorry?
Everybody. The confusion of everybody.
To the confusion of everybody, yeah. Is that, he takes all the money out, and he tells Batgirl, get in the trunk, while he sends Robin off to distract Joker.
Right, which, again, why? And also, not only that, but I like the animation of him throwing the money away. It's just a hand, because you've got the Batman's, his kind of his chest and head, the head and shoulders shot, and the hand on the screen just throwing the money away. And it is such an absurd image, that he's just, and it's like, what is he doing? And anyway.
No, exactly. It's all absurd, but... Because when you consider the fact that if Joker and them were coming back to get the chest anyway, why not just get the jump on them then? But no, instead we got to carry the chest back. We've got, all right, this is cool. We got then Batman and Robin approaching the boat in the Batboat.
How did it go?
Great. Hang on.
Now to open a chest and get the goodies. Batboat to starboard! The blasted dynamic dodos! Batgirl!
Shiver your timbers and raise your hands, Joker.
Unlimber the cannon!
They're firing cannon! Stand by for evasive action!
Joker slowed them down. I'll help him catch up.
Avast, ye lovers!
As you noted, why don't they do this or why don't they do that? Everything is unnecessarily elaborate. And this goes throughout the entire series, and that was always part of the joke in Batman 66. The unnecessary elaborateness of it all. Nobody, or I can't say nobody, but few people just take out a gun and shoot Batman.
I must escape! Ah! Looks like Long John Joker struck his colors. You won, Batman. But the loot, where is it?
Gone were the island winds, Joker.
But that was a fortune in greenbacks.
And all counterfeit. The Krink's car that Big Arnie heisted was a decoy.
And left the map for suckers?
What's that hyena laughing at now?
Just this, Batgirl. You can't jail me for looking for phony money I never really found.
No, but the laugh's on you, Joker. I'm locking you up for making a movie without a permit.
What? You can't do that to me!
Or try to. guns are rarely seen. Everything is the Rube Goldberg device ideas, where just like this really elaborate way of accomplishing a very simple thing. And they do this, and part of it is because they're stretching out the episodes in the cartoon. Part of it is also because they just want to do set pieces. They want to let's get from point A to point B, and let's not give too much detail in between because we just want to get to point B.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So, a bat fight breaks out when Batgirl gets out of the chest and Batman and Robin board the ship and such. And, it's like, I don't know. They capture him.
Yeah. And they just happen to get there was also like the 50 million cannonballs. They show like the pile of like 6, and then the next thing you know, there's like 50 of them come flying by the screen, and they hobble everyone, and ultimately because of a great shot, the yardarm comes down, and the flag comes draping over Joker. Again, wah wah. There's the Joker's pirate flag over his body, and he's captured. And case closed.
Exactly. Case closed, and we get the wah wah ending too, because it's like, it was fake money, so you can't hold Joker for. Although, never mind the fact that he was holding the 3 of them prisoner. They don't bring that up at all. Gordon's plan is, I'm going to hold you on shooting a movie without a license.
Yes, which of course would never get overturned on appeal. Because that's if that's not cruel and unusual punishment. I mean, here's the Joker. Obviously enough of an upstanding citizen that he's got a library card and goes to the library to take things out. I don't think you're going to get the charges. If you're not going to charge him with kidnapping, if you're not going to charge him with assault, if you're not going to charge him with conspiracy, if you're only going to charge him with filming without a license, then I mean, it's no wonder these criminals get out of jail as often as they do on this show. It's because every judge probably because there's no probable cause. They half the time they're being arrested for crimes that haven't happened. So there you go. I think that the appeal rate in Gotham City, I think, is extremely high.
Yeah.
if this is any indication.
I don't know. For me, I know you say there's a lot of we did. What was it? Surf's Up, Joker's Under. And that was so absurd. This could have been Surf's Up, Joker's Under for the anime. But it's just so badly done.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah.
Sometimes something is so bad it's good. Sometimes something is so bad it's bad. And I kind of lean toward going, and not to knock it because I'm sure there are people who listen to this who love it, but that's my issue with the 1977 Filmation, is that because of Batmite it's so bad it's bad. I can't watch it, and I want to try again, but I've not had really any success. This stuff to me is so bad it's good that for the most part, unlike the last episode where we talked about the Penguin one-parter where it just didn't work, this I think at least it works on the schlock value. There are so many absurd things. There are so many off the wall things that happen that I'm at least entertained, even though it's really kind of crappy. But again, it also makes me wonder: is it the finite 8 minutes that makes it that really emphasizes the lack of logic in some of these things, because they're trying to squeeze so much action into one 8 minute segment,
right?
That it feels to me that there is a theme that's developing, that these single segments aren't quite as up to snuff as the two-parters because there's not enough time to air out the storytelling. And it makes me wonder either whether they were conceived as two-parters and they had to squeeze them, or whether they just kind of were tap, 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 let's just get this done, let's get this done. No talking, let's just get from one place to the next, and logic be damned. But it does seem that the two-parters, even though they can sometimes feel a little padded, on the whole, are more successful than the single segment episodes.
Yeah, I would agree on that. Yeah. So, all right, before we wrap up this show, Dan, what's happening over at 13thdimension.com?
Well, as always, in addition to everything else that we cover, because it's my favorite thing, I write about Batman all the time. And lately, when it comes to Batman 66, we've been doing a lot on the Funko figures that are. By the time you your listeners hear this episode, they're going to be pretty close to release, the first wave. But we've been doing a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff with that. So if you're interested in this whole world, whether it be Batman 66 or retro Batman, we've got a lot going on with that. Plus, we always do our usual, comic book previews for Batman 66 and interviews, and there's always something Batman 66 that you can find at our website. So I highly encourage people to come check us out. Plus the other stuff that we've got going on as well, that whether it's retro stuff or modern stuff, come check us out.
And remember, folks, that's 13th, the number 13th, dimension.com. All right, well, this one didn't work out so well for me this time compared to last time, but next time we've got Penguin and Catwoman, long before Tim Burton got his hands on them, at odds over a ruby in our two-part story, and we've got the Riddler putting his disguise talents to the test in our one-part story for the next episode.
Excellent.
Yeah, so we got
Can't wait.
Nice little variety of villains there. That I'm looking forward to.
Yes.
Yeah. So until next time, folks, thank you so much for listening. Once again, citizens, Dan, take care, everybody.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for listening, chums. I don't have a bat phone, but you can contact the Batcave Podcast through its Facebook page, Twitter, email at thebatcavepodcast@gmail.com. Subscribe to the podcast via Libsyn.com. That's LIBSYN.com. Or through iTunes. The Batcave Podcast is part of a series of pop culture podcasts from the Chronic Rift Network. Find them at chronicrift.com. So until next time, citizens, same bat time, same Batcave Podcast.